Hi, everybody. Welcome to today's career panel discussion with MMC. We're really excited to have you. I'm going to give us a couple minutes or 1 minute for all of our attendees to make it into the room, and then I will get things started. My name is Katie Sansoni. I am the Executive Director of Musical Mentors. And with us today, we have Kevin Lenaghan, who is a board member and a former musical mentor volunteer. He actually started with the organization during COVID. And we have Seung Lee, who is a former Columbia student, who was also a Columbia chapter president and was a musical mentor herself. So we're excited to get some conversation started with them. And you know that at the end of this panel discussion, about the last 15 minutes or so, we will have opportunity for Q&A. Right now it's set up so you are muted and aren't able to talk during the webinar, so we can move through our planned questions, but there is a Q&A box at the bottom of your Zoom. Please do throw questions in there. I will field them as we go if that's possible, but I will absolutely collect them for the end Q&A and we can address any questions you may have. Give it about 30 more seconds and we will get started. Please do know that we are recording today's session. So for those of you who have friends and musical mentor colleagues, you can let them know that we will share snippets of today's conversation out with people so we can see some of this asynchronously. Okay, let's get started. So our first big question and our goal of today is to have some honest conversation around what the pathway is from either graduation from college to professional careers. And we know that our musical mentors are at many different points in their career. They might still be in college, they might be early graduates, they might be musicians or professionals who have worked for a number of years, but everyone can learn from people's stories, and that's the goal of today. So I'm going to start with Kevin. Kevin, we'd love to know what you're doing today. Tell us a little bit about your current career, and just the big question is, take us from college to today. What were those key decisions and pivots or experiences that guided that trajectory?
Sure. Thank you very, very much for the introduction and for having me. So my daughter is in a reading class in the background, so if you hear a little girl talking, apologize for the background noise. Yeah, so my career has definitely taken a few turns, quite nonlinear, I would say. So I went to the University of Pennsylvania, the Wharton School for undergraduate in business and finance, and then I started my career in investment banking in New York, and then I did some econometric consulting for a firm called FTI Consulting for a few years. I really wanted to be involved with markets and investing, and it was hard to transition to that without going to graduate school. So I got my MBA also at the Wharton School at Penn. After I finished my MBA, so I'm quite old now. I'm dating myself with some of these anecdotes, but I finished my MBA right around the global financial crisis. So I finished the program in December 2008, which was a terrible time to look for a job. But I got a job in investing, like I wanted to, at a firm called Cliffwater. Cliffwater is a big investment advisory firm and now private credit focused asset manager based in Marina Del Rey, California. And so I joined that firm. So I had a great career there. I was there about 9 years, rose through the ranks. And we invest, the firm's main goal is investing in alternatives. So hedge funds, private equity, venture capital, real estate, and now private credit. So I was initially on the hedge fund research team. So we would research hedge funds, try to find the best ones for our clients, write reports, and then recommend them, and then build kind of diversified alternatives portfolios for institutional clients. So that's how I first got to know Musical Mentors, because the founder, Zach Suzel, is a now senior executive at D. Shaw. D. Shaw, if you guys don't know, is a quant-oriented multi-strategy hedge fund, very successful, one of the best performing and biggest hedge funds in the world. So I got to know him professionally when when I covered D. Shaw and had tried to get clients invested in that firm. And you know, we worked on that level, but then also we had the musical interest in common. We went to concerts together and became, you know, pretty good friends. So anyway, so going back to my career, so I was at Cliffwater. At the end of my tenure there, I was on the investment committee, and so we were the investment committee was responsible for evaluating all of the alternative investments that our clients that we were recommending to our clients. So it's about $60 billion in assets under advisement at the time. So we were, you know, very significant players, and then the firm still is a huge a player in the alternative investment area. So it's really fun role with a lot of growth and a lot of mentorship. And I'll talk about that. I'll talk about that a little bit more later. Then I joined a firm called Clock Tower Group, where I was the head of hedge funds. That firm has a hedge fund seeding business, so we would provide seed capital for macro-oriented hedge funds and help them grow and manage risk and invest and raise capital. And then for the past few years, I've had my own investment advisory firm. It's called Ivy Academy. So I work with high net worth investors and family offices on investing. So I do asset allocation and I invest in alternatives. I still invest in hedge funds, but I've been doing a lot more in the private investing space. So some venture investments and some co-investments, direct deals, growth equity deal situations and things like that. So and then outside of work, I play classical piano. As Katie mentioned, I was a pro bono tutor during COVID for MMC. I still try to play actively. I'm trying to get my kids interested in music, and so yeah, I'll stop there. Katie, I think you're muted. Yeah.
I sure am. Man, thought I could make it through at least one Zoom this week without having that happen, but not today. Um, do you feel like so it sounds like you had lots of pivots during your career. They were all aligned, they all connected, but it wasn't, there were different moments of change. Um, do you think there were any decisions or specific experiences that changed that trajectory, or you were just following your interests and your connections and the opportunities that came to you?
Yeah, good question. So, I- well, one thing that I thought about when I was thinking about this, preparing for this panel, was over specialization in certain areas early in a career. And so that role, the pre-MBA role of econometric consulting, I was good at it, and it definitely flexed my and improved my kind of quantitative abilities and analytical abilities, and also that's also closely related to music, which we can talk about more later. Um, uh, so you know, music and math, I think, are closely related. But I found myself getting very specialized in what's called 10b5 litigation cases, and 10b5 is a legal term for basically big class action lawsuits in against companies. And so one of the projects that I worked on a lot during that job was the Enron bankruptcy. So the shareholders of Enron who were damaged by Enron's malfeasance sued the investment banks who had helped Enron basically lie to the investing public for billions of dollars. And so that was, I won't bore you guys with the details, but there was a lot of analytical work in determining how much investors actually lost, and how much the facilitating or they're the banks who facilitated Enron's business, were on the hook for. And so there's legal questions, and then also a lot of kind of econometric and financial work behind that. So really interesting project, but also quite specialized. I was not a PhD. I am not a PhD in economics, and so the next step in that career would be to be like a kind of an expert witness, and so I guess so I'm rambling a little bit, but I found myself getting too specialized too quickly early in my career, and as I mentioned before, I wanted to be involved in investing, and so it did require a pivot and another degree. So in hindsight, I probably spent too much in that too long in that career, and it didn't really match my long-term interests. The going moving forward a little bit, the focus on hedge funds are back in favor now for reasons I can talk about if you guys are interested, but for many years they were out of favor, especially relative to other types of alternatives. So that was another pivot where I had to kind of get up to speed more on venture capital and private credit, and non-hedge fund areas that were more in favor over many of the past sort of 10 years or so. So I would just balance that. You definitely want to know something more than other people, and really kind of that's the way to add value to an organization. But the risk is that you get too specialized too quickly, and then the thing that you're doing is you find does not in favor anymore. So
Never honestly thought about that. And for this whole group, I have zero finance experience other than the budgets that I run for a nonprofit. But it's really interesting to think about that specialization. It's something that we think about in music a lot.
yeah.
Kevin, thank you for sharing that. We have more questions for you, but I'm going to jump to Sung and ask her to do the same. So tell us about your current career, and then take us from college to today. For you, what were those key decisions? Did you have pivots, and what experiences do you think shaped where you are today?
Yeah, of course. Hi everyone, great to virtually meet you guys as an alum. So I am CC 2017, so way back in the day. And I was a neuroscience and behavior major, which I thought was super popular when I was in college, and my roommate was like, no song, because that's like only you like hung out with people who are pre-meds, and they're like half of them were neuro majors. I really, really liked my major personally, and I thought it was like really dynamic. And the reason I chose it was because there was so much unknown field within neuroscience, and I just loved the learning aspect. And given my major, naturally, the career path that I really thought I would have was either in academia or in pre-med. And for all throughout college, I took all the pre courses, and I did a lot of research at basement of Schermerhorn under Dr. Donald Hood. He used to teach like Sci, but I think he finally, thank God, retired. I still keep in connect with him, which is great. So a lot of great memories there. But eventually, I think after graduating college, I think the parts that I liked about being a neuroscience major no longer really apply to the career paths that I was aspiring to be. So I took a little step back, moved back home, and like kind of reassess what my career options are, and eventually decided consulting would be very interesting. So I was doing a lot of research in medical devices. So I decided to follow that route. So did consulting for competitive landscape, mostly for like medical device focused area at IQVIA, and then eventually consulting. It was like kind of during the COVID lockdown, and there was a lot of funding and a lot of demand for just healthcare consulting in general. And I wanted to learn more about the pharmaceutical space, so switched companies. Eventually realized that there were a lot of big missing portions within consulting world, especially in regards to financial analysis and understanding companies at a more high level. And I really looked into that. I looked at hedge funds, I looked at private equity, investment banking, venture capital, you name it. I had coffee chats with people, and I like really looked into that. Eventually decided I wanted to kind of learn more about that from investment banking angle. So went to business school at Columbia and just graduated in 2025. And now I'm in Morgan Stanley, investment banking in the healthcare division.
I love that. So similar concept of there have been some pivots for you. There have been some shifts, and um, it sounds like, tell me if I'm misunderstanding this, but it sounds like you followed, these are things that are grabbing my attention. These are things that I'm finding interesting. These are things that I want to learn more about or be more involved in, and that's kind of shaped. Is that, am I understanding that correctly?
No, for sure. And I think in the beginning, like, throughout my time in college, I never had a true internship. It was always like in academia, like very pre-med focused. So I felt very much like fish out of the water when I was like first searching for my job. And I was like, oh my gosh, like I didn't even know how to put a resume together. And so that was a very bizarre, I feel like, experience now that I'm on the like extreme, I feel like, side of corporate America. But I think I naturally try to be a little bit more logical in terms of the opportunities that could be presented to me in following my careers. And I think one advice that I would have to like everyone on this call is if you have something very specific that you want to pursue, like you're like, I want to study like how, like the fungi, like specific fungi, like the Amazon rainforest, like is affected by climate change, like by all means, like go do that. Like that's your passion. Like you should definitely follow that. But I think when you are kind of either transitioning careers or starting your like careers for the first time, a really good advice is to go into fields that will open more doors for you than close them. And I know like New York Times like came out with articles like, oh my gosh, there's a brain drain. Like everyone's going into consulting, banking, and like big law, and that's like so terrible for the world. And I see their angle, but I also think like from your professional perspective, like you want to be the ones like choosing which exit opportunities you have and like the next step down the line rather than that being forced upon you. And I can't emphasize that enough. Like, um, it's like a great, I feel like feeling to have a little bit more agency and control within your career rather than being, like stuck, feeling like you're stuck in it and like you can't necessarily pivot.
I I would assume that most of the attendees that we have today have an interest in finance in some way, which is why they joined live. Um, and I will say, if that is not your career track, that is true across all industries. That's true for musicians, it's true for educators, it's true anywhere. And I think it's the biggest thing that college students especially aren't prepared for. There's not a space in higher education that best prepares you to be entrepreneurial and be um, have agency for yourself. There's not as much guidance in that because it really is just gut feeling and personal attention to it. But I'm not talking about my experience, but I'll say that I know many people like this, and I myself had similar experiences of constantly pivoting and having to keep an eye on what opportunities might come up. So Sonia, really like that you shared that. I want to piggyback on that because this ties in. Our next question is, um, do you have a moment that you could share that happened after college where you felt really uncertain, where you didn't know what was happening next, or you were concerned about what was happening next, and how did you get through that, or what was that experience like for you?
I can start if that's okay.
Yeah, please do.
So
I think it ties into what you were just saying. So you perfectly directed us into the next question. Thank you.
no, thank you. So I think I kind of prefaced it a little before, like when I was transitioning like away from academia slash being pre-med into corporate America, like there are many months where like I was applying for jobs and like keep in mind like the unemployment rate was like so low during the time, like people writing articles about how like anyone can get in like through like any jobs if they wanted to, like just the opportunities were like so good. And I just remember feeling like I was like a complete failure because like I'm like applying to these jobs and like, like I'm not getting interviews or like, I'm essentially not getting the jobs that I felt like I really wanted. So I know the job market is like really not ideal right now. So hopefully the story like serves as a little bit of condolence as like you guys like transition or like if you are looking for jobs at the moment. And I think in those times also, one, it's important to just from time to time like step back because I think transitioning or like finding opportunities for yourself is the right logical move to do, obviously, but it can drive you insane. And I've personally experienced it. So, you know, like taking time for yourself, making sure like you are well, I think it's very important. And then number two, um, just being really entrepreneurial about like your opportunities. Like I don't necessarily recommend that you do, but you do this, but like every single day, like I get an email from like an undergraduate student who found me on LinkedIn. And then they message me because they're interested in careers in investment banking. And that's really great. Unfortunately, I can't get back to everyone, but I think if there are opportunities like that you want to get, like you should definitely be reaching out to people. And the more connections that you have, like the better. So if you feel like they're from your hometown, that's better. If you share the same alma mater and Columbia has such a great and like wide, vast network of people, you know, that gives you an edge over other people who's like reaching out to me from like Hopkins, Harvard, like Brown, Michigan today I received. Um, they'll likely answer your emails. And I think just keeping a grid, like making sure like you follow through on like what you're supposed to do and just not giving up. Unfortunately, I think is the honest answer or like based on my experience that I can share.
I love that. Another connection point is MMC. You
Yes,
see
that's true.
someone that was an MMC chapter member, musical mentor. That's another connector, and we hope to create more of that moving forward within the organization. Kevin, same question for you. Do you have a memory of a moment where you thought, oh my gosh, what does this new shift mean for me? Or you were uncertain about what your next step might be?
Yeah, so this is gonna be a bit of a personal story, but as I mentioned, I was at this firm Cliffwater for about 9 years until late 2017. Um, at that time, the firm was not doing great. They had not built the big private credit business that they have now. They were working on it, but it was taking a while to kind of congeal. And the bonus has been cut for a couple years in a row. So I was recruited to join this other smaller firm called Clock Tower Group, which is run by a very entrepreneurial but very kind of mercurial founder with a big personality. His name is Steve Drobny. He's written a few books on macro investing that you guys might have seen. Inside the House of Money is the famous one that he wrote. But it was but he so he but it, he's I was in LA. Clock Tower is based in Santa Monica, so I wanted to stay local. I had two small children at the time, or at that, well, when I joined, I had one small child. Then I had two later. But he recruited me, and I knew it was a risk to join his firm because it was sort of like a cult of personality. And the firm really revolved around him, or that was at least the external perception. So I addressed that concern during the interviews, and he kind of sold me a story that this is going to be a real partnership, and that I would be one of basically five partners along with him, and that I could move the business in certain directions that I was interested in going. So I was there for a couple of years. I learned a lot, worked hard, got paid well, but the business was not really moving in the directions that I had hoped it would be moving, and it wasn't a real partnership. And so long story short, it wasn't really working out. So by late 2019, there was an exit plan for me from that firm. At that time, I did have two small children, so when this kind of when it became real that this was not going to be the partner track that I had expected, that would sort of be the last most successful part of my career. Um, that was, a very challenging period. I remember going home to my kids who were 1 and 3 years old at the time, and I really felt, had a lack of direction, and it was just a really, really big disappointment from a professional perspective. Now, the upside to this story is that on the way out, Steve Drobny, the founder of the firm, said, "Hey, I think you're really smart. You're a great investor. You're good with clients, and you should be your own boss." He said, "I've been running this firm for 15 years, and it's challenging for sure at times, but I see you doing the same thing." So I did take that to heart, and he and other people at Collecto were supportive as I established my business, and now I've been running it for about 5 years now. So that was definitely a what seemed to be a incredibly stressful, burdensome time, but it inspired me to do something I probably wouldn't have done otherwise, and I'm happy for it.
Thanks for sharing that story, Kevin. Those are big moments that I think in early career in college we're not aware or ready for. I think the best advice that's really hard to hear when you're in the moment is all these big shifts often lead to something even more amazing on the other side. So I think you were saying something similar, and that when things feel really hard, there are moments of clarity that will come after them. So hear that now, because you'll probably have a moment similar at some point in your career, and it's good to know that these moments often bring about opportunity. Just when you're in them, it doesn't always feel that way.
Yeah, and I wanted to emphasize another or talk about the networking aspect you guys both mentioned also for a minute. So I would encourage everybody on the call to really leverage your network, and so the MMC network is great. And so if I ever got a inbound LinkedIn message or email from someone who said I'm involved with MMC or I was a former MMC student, I would always respond, like all the time. I've also leveraged the Wharton network significantly. I usually get responses. Now, as Seung kind of mentioned, people are busy, so you have to take that into consideration. But the chance that you'll get help or guidance from somebody who is within a network like that is much higher than otherwise. Throughout my career, I've developed close friendships with certain folks, and so that's I try to maintain those relationships even if I'm not in the role where I can be of great usefulness to their business anymore. And people are again, people are likely to respond if you have kind of a personal connection to them. So just don't keep that in mind. The one caution I would on this point is that the world is transactional, and people have limited time. Myself, I'm sure Sung is super busy, working 100 hours a week, and so people work hard, and so you don't want to be annoying, and you want to try to bring something to the table that can be helpful to the person who you're asking advice for or looking for a job from, or something like that. Now, if you're a college student and you're talking to a senior executive at Morgan Stanley, there's not much you can really provide to them realistically. But I would just kind of think of I just wanted to raise those points about networking.
Thank you for sharing that. And I think you guys are really helping me out here with transitions, because I think that transitions into, one way that we are all connected, one way that we have a network is that we're all musicians. And some people that are connected to our organization are full-time musicians, or some people are full-time music educators, and some people are amateur musicians who find different ways to keep music in their lives. And that is why you got involved with one of our university chapters or became a musical mentor. I think what we all know as a collective network is that music is something that enhances our lives. It also enhances our successes and our professional careers. So what I'd like to ask, Seung, maybe I can start with you, is are there skills that you develop through music, either as a mentor, as a musical mentor, or as a musician yourself, that has shaped professional or personal, your professional or personal life?
Yeah, for sure. Something that I feel like I realized growing up playing piano was I used to go to competitions and, like you're all busy with schools, etc. But I remember distinctly like my practice hours like ranging from like 1 to 2 hours every day to like 3 to 4 and like sometimes up to like 10 hours a day. Not often, obviously, because I had school, but sometimes it did. And I just remember like each hour or each two incremental hour that I had to practice a little bit more compared to the previous day. I just remember the first couple of days being like, oh my gosh, like I want to jump off a building. Like this is like awful. I don't know like how long I can sit here. But once I made it from like 1 hour of practice to 3 hours of practice, and I continued for 3 hours, that felt normal. And then once I got used to that and like upped it to 5, like that felt normal. And being a musician, you kind of know that like your skills can't improve without like the practice, sometimes painful as it can come with. And I think that kind of helped me shape and like being consistent with like whatever effort that I'm putting in, and like knowing that sometimes when things can seem painful, like if I do stick it out, like it will be better, or like increasing my tolerance in that way. And I think that translates not outside of like music and like practicing piano, it translated to like studying, and like right now it translates to working like when the hours get really really long and tiresome. So I think that part really helped in terms of having continuity in like what you're doing. And the other part is just like having the patience that like I won't be the best in the room unless like you put in the hours, and like putting in the hours is a very crucial part, I think, in many aspects of life. So I think those are the general like themes I can take away from having been a musician.
Love it. Discipline and patience. Um, 100%. Kevin, I know you have a good answer for this as well, so love to get your thoughts on how music has shaped personal and professional parts of your lives. How is that be either being a musician or teaching yourself?
Yeah. So I would definitely reiterate the discipline points that Seung mentioned. So just working hard is you and having the discipline to practice hours a day is critical. Um, I would also say that I play classical piano. I'm not sure how many of you guys know the piano literature well, but I think playing virtuoso level pieces of music. So something like the Ligeti Etudes, if you guys know that music, or like the Prokofiev. I saw the Prokofiev Second Piano Concerto in concert a few weeks ago here in LA with Yu Wang, and so ridiculously hard pieces like that. Everything else seems easy from an analytical perspective, and so I've had the good fortune of working with and getting to know some of the smartest, most sophisticated investors in the world. So top hedge fund managers, billionaire hedge fund managers, and top private equity people and venture people. And that's not an easy job, especially on the hedge fund side when you're dealing with markets and navigating day-to-day volatility, trying to generate alpha consistently. But I think the challenge of learning of really any job in finance is less than the challenge of becoming a great virtuoso as a musician. You guys might disagree, but that's just kind of my personal view. So when you dedicate all this time and energy and intellectual capacity to learning music at a high level, it makes everything else seem more manageable, or I don't want to say easy, but easier. Um, so yeah, so that's I think I'll stop there, but that's kind of the high level points I want to make.
I like a lot. I think Yu Wang might want quote you on that and put that out with all of her socials, saying that what she does is way harder than anybody else's job.
Well, yeah, she's a great musician, but an equally great self promoter.
Yep.
It's interesting
An
that
equally great human being, I think, as well.
yeah,
So
yeah. The
yeah.
performance actually was with the LA Phil, and it was kind of messy actually. So if someone wants to talk about that offline, I'd be happy to share. But she and the conductor were not on the same page in terms of tempo and things like that.
Mhm.
But which is challenging when you have such a difficult piece.
Yeah. Yeah.
But
Um, I think something that I've seen with a lot, as I shared at the beginning, Kevin shared, Kevin is board member. Um, and what I've seen a lot of our musical mentors have in their lives is a continuation of music being a joyful part. And at MMC, we talk about the developmental importance and the educational importance and the importance of having a mentor in your lives, and all these things are really great for kids. But the other piece is just music is joyful. Music is a space for you to disconnect from the harder days or the harder things in your day. It's a way to build community. It's a way to have friends. It's a way to spend time outside of your workspace. And so what I love is seeing Kevin continue to have that very much in his life. He and I have had multiple conversations about live performance and the LA Phil and coming to New York and seeing big shows at the Met. And so music can be a really wonderful addition, a joyful addition to your life. And it can bring you community and it can bring you so there's lots of things that we say, provides to everybody. There are lots of things that will make you a better employee, will make you a better professional, but it's also just joyful.
yeah, that's the other thing. Thank you. That's the other thing I forgot to mention before. I wanted to mention is that sharing music has been very beneficial to my career. So, and when there's a lot of, especially in like in the hedge fund area, there's a lot of whining and dining, and there's a big. I was in Miami last week for a big conference, and there's stuff like that. But if you go to a concert with a colleague or someone who you want to work with, that's the best, kind of bonding I think you can do much better than just going to a bar or going to dinner with somebody or even going to an athletic event. So I've personally benefited from musical connections with people who have been very helpful in my career. I'll just drop one name. There's a hedge fund manager in London who is a major donor to the arts. He's a billionaire, and he's a musician. His children are musicians, and so I've gone to the Glyndebourne Festival in the UK with him, where he's a major donor, and a bunch of I saw Dee Valkyrie at the London Proms with him and a few colleagues, and he's a very prominent person, well-known person. So then when I was joining Clock Tower Group, he served as a personal reference for me. So to have someone like that as a reference is really really great. And I don't think he would have agreed to do that if we had not developed this personal relationship in addition to our professional activities.
That's a great thing to add there, Kevin. So flipping a couple questions of like looking back on your life, looking back to 5, 10, 15, 20, however many years ago. Seung, do you have, when you were 20, 22, when you were in college or just finishing college, was there something that you believed about success that you no longer believe? Did you have a assumption about what success would look like or a strong belief about what your direction would be that you have since changed your opinion on?
Yeah, for sure. It's gonna sound really corny, but I no longer believe like success is an end destination. It's more like pursuit of it. My colleagues, I can hear them, they're like laughing at me like behind me right now. But it's like, I think when you're in high school, you think like getting into like a really good college. They're still laughing. Getting into a really great college is like a definition of success. After that, like whatever like graduate programs or like whatever job the title gives you is a success. But I mean, that could be a metric of success. I do agree. but I don't think like personally, as I think you achieve those milestones or like you realize it's not really like, you know, you don't feel like really fulfilled. I must say, like once you get those titles, I think it's like very similar to being a musician where like I personally fulfilled like day in and day out, like practicing a little bit more, like seeing like the tricks I was doing on the piano, like I could do them the next day compared to like the previous days, like where I couldn't. And I think that's very similar to like how I look at success. I no longer think it's like one thing that defines like what it is for me, but like sort of like what I learn along the way that I think I'm able to measure, how much I've grown essentially.
I love that so much. Love that so much. Thank you for sharing. Kevin, punting it over to you. When you look back, is there something about success that you now look at differently?
Yeah, I like what Sung said and the way she worded it. I don't think it was that cheesy. But it's harder than I thought it would be when I was 22, and maybe I got unlucky in some ways. I think I definitely did, especially with that situation with the kind of failed partnership. But you know, you, I just, especially coming out of Wharton, it's just if you get like a lot of people who are in their 20s or between 20 and 22 who are at Wharton are like the hardest thing is getting in, right? But if you get in and you manage to finish the program with a decent GPA, it's like, well, that's you're set for life because you have that amazing pedigree behind you. It's not that simple, and for me, it certainly wasn't. Um, you know, One thing that was a challenge for me is that I was very into I'm obviously still very interested in music, and so I spent a lot of time doing that in college. I was also in some piano competitions and traveled extensively in Europe and to places like Kiev, Ukraine for piano related stuff. And so that was great. And I spent a lot of time practicing, which was also, I don't regret it. But it did take my eye off the career ball a little bit. And I probably could, compared to other people who maybe had a little bit more focus on specifically how they wanted their career to go and kind of planning the first 5 to 10 years of their career, to the extent that can be planned. Um, so my GPA, was not. It could have been higher probably in undergrad. It was high in MBA school, but undergrad it could have been higher, and I probably could have I probably could have done more networking and done more research into, things like private equity, so I could get a role at a major private equity firm kind of earlier in my career. So that's the one note of caution is there's only so many hours in the day, and when you spend a lot of time playing music, you do have to spend less time doing other things, and so that was in hindsight a challenge for me. Again, I don't regret the music at all, but just thinking about it, that it was my early career could have been a little bit more focused.
Makes sense. And again, you guys are helping me out, leading me into the next question. So we have about 15 more minutes, and I will leave time at the end for a Q&A. But I do have one last question that we've linked in the music piece. We've linked in the career trajectory, but a big part of MMC is also mentorship. And so, Seung, if you were mentoring your younger self, if you were mentoring your senior year of college or your first year out of college self, what do you think you would emphasize? What do you think you would tell that person, that version of you, to focus on and work towards?
For sure. I think part of the reason that I like stuck out with like being pre-med or like pre-academia, like whatever, for so long was because I was like, I put in so much time and like effort and whatever, like building up my resume so I can become like a PhD or a doctor or whatever. And I think I was very anxious and like afraid of like letting that go. But it's better done earlier than later. And unless you're like very sure about yourself in a field, um, that's very, highly competitive and like predetermined for you. So like pre-law, like pre-med, like there are certain careers that like if you don't do it right then and there and you're sure about it, you kind of like really do make it harder for yourself. But I think just about any other career, including finance to an extent, because IB recruitment starts like so early these days, but to an extent still, finance you can get in afterwards as well. You can get in for most other jobs, and even like PhDs, you can get it a little bit later. So if you think you're like unsure about whatever you're doing, I would say I would tell myself to take a chance and try something else.
Take a chance. I like that. I like that. Kevin, how about you? Have you thought about that? What you would tell your younger self? I think you might have said a little bit of it in your last answer, but what do you
Yeah,
think you would?
yeah, I would, don't beat yourself up too much as you have challenges in your career. Just recognize that there are going to be challenges, um, and always learn. So the one of the reasons I wanted to get into investing as opposed to more of a consulting role is because markets are very dynamic and there's always something new to learn, and every day is a challenge. um, History repeats itself somewhat in terms of markets and geopolitics and how to think about investing, but there's but not not in a kind of mirrored way. So there's always you need to understand what happened in the past to be a good investor, but you also need to be flexible about the current environment and what you think that the future might be. But that's a fascinating uh, a fascinating thing to do on a day-to-day basis. Gets you out of bed, and you're always learning. I also don't see myself ever really retiring. Um, Hopefully I'll have financial independence and not have to work for somebody, and I don't now. But I work for my clients, but I don't I don't have a boss. So but the idea of always learning something and enriching yourself is fascinating. So yeah, so sorry I rambled a little bit, but that's what I'd say about that.
It's great. Um, and I think I would just add to everybody, if you haven't found someone you feel is a mentor, if you haven't found a person in your life that you can talk to about your career, about your personal life, about what's going on day to day, there are so many statistics out there that talk about the importance of mentorship in a person's life that equals success, that equals um, positive professional experiences. So I would say, as one great question to ask as you're looking into companies is, do you have a mentorship program? Do you partner a new employee with someone who is more seasoned within your organization to offer support? If they don't have that, can you seek that out? As Seung suggested, there's great ways to do that through LinkedIn and other networks. As Kevin said, that networking piece of your next few years is going to be very important, and find those people in your lives. I think I would guess that Sung, Kevin, and I could all list off a handful of people who have supported us through different points in our careers and different points in our personal lives. And so that's a really important piece to this puzzle. Um, with that, we have about 10 minutes left, and I'd love to open it up to questions. So if you click on the Q&A button at the bottom of your Zoom page, you can add questions, and we can open that up for Kevin and Sung to respond and share. It can be anything from, can you expand more on something, or it can be very specific additional questions. We've got one, so I'll just jump in. Um, how can I strategically manage my limited time in college to balance academics, research, and involvement in organizations like MMC? Particularly, how can I develop the ability to prioritize effectively among the many valuable opportunities available to me? My recommendation is give up sleep, but I'm going to let Sung and Kevin answer that. I think they would have wonderful answers. Do one of you want to jump in on that first?
I can jump in and I can pass it on to Kevin. I think yes, there is so many opportunities, and you feel like a little bit FOMO in each opportunity that you don't take. But I think I would encourage you to seek answer for yourself on like why you're pursuing those opportunities. Like, do you need, like, are you doing MMC partly obviously because you want to give back, but like you're applying to different programs and like you need sort of extracurricular on the line, or are you doing it because like you want to kind of pursue like a PhD in music and that resonates like more to you? So I think those are like different questions or different answers that people have for themselves. And then I think I would basically prioritize like whether it's schools, extracurriculars, like networking, everything based on sort of like what you want to get out of it rather than going the other way around and seeing, what like going for the opportunities just for the sake of just trying them out. It seems like whoever asked this has, it's like they're fortunate to have many things going on in that life. So if you need to prioritize in that sense, I would sort of take a logical, like top-down approach and ask yourself, like, what kind of makes the most sense for you? Kevin, anything
Yeah.
else?
No, I think that's good. I would don't try to really focus on the only thing I would add is just be thoughtful about the things that you spend time on, and if something is at all seeming like a waste of time or not serving you, kind of and moving towards the direction you want to go, I would drop that. The other thing I would just, in my experience, I feel like I've wasted a lot of time in team meetings and group settings. Now, I'm not saying don't join a team or don't join a group. Of course, teamwork is critical to a career and to success in school, especially business school. But it's not, I don't know. I just you want to partner with people who are going to be beneficial to you, and hopefully you're beneficial to them as well. And so just be intentional about kind of the groups you join, where you spend your time, but also the relationships that you choose to foster.
They're both really good responses. Really, it's really great feedback. Whoever asked this question, it's really wonderful that you're already thinking about prioritization. What I will add as a manager of lots of people over the years, and this isn't specific to an industry, is prioritization is honestly one of the most important pieces, especially of a young employee who's being given an extensive amount of work. So most likely in your first few years, you're going to work long, big hours. That might last for a long time. That might filter off at some point. But as a new employee, you often are taking longer to learn your responsibilities and your tasks. And the staff I have worked with that are most successful are those that can prioritize their time and can then come to their manager with a breakdown of here are the things that I'm prioritizing. Here are the things I'm struggling to get to. Can you please tell me if I'm prioritizing correctly, if I'm missing anything, and how I should better address these things that might not fit into my 40, 50, 60, 80, 100 hours, right? People who are already aware of how to manage prioritization, I feel like some of your question is, how do I even start with prioritizing? What do I actually do there? And there's lots of ways to address that. Some people manage their time in a calendar. I think when you're looking at this, something that I experienced early on in my career was realizing if I had a blank second in my calendar, I would fill it with something. And then I would realize I had, as I said earlier, very little time to sleep, or I have very little time to breathe, or I have very little time to actually sit and digest what I'm working on, or as Kevin said, having free moments of alone time to kind of do the tasks that I've outlined for myself. And so making sure you're creating space for that is important. I'm sure we could do a whole session on prioritization and how to implement that either into your schoolwork or into your professional career. But I'd say you're on the right track knowing that it's a question in the first place. So toy there. We have another question about, were there classes that you think were most educational and influential in your career? So thinking back to those college years and classes that you took, things that still stick with you today.
Yeah, there. I'll start with. So some of the more the things that stand out now are some of the more interesting and challenging finance related elective classes. So I took a class on fixed income. And so I don't know if how much you guys know about fixed income, but it can get really, really complicated when you talk about the second and third derivatives of duration and convexity and things like that. And so it was a very quant oriented class, and so very challenging. But that one really stands out to me. There was a class on accounting that was focused on kind of accounting malfeasance and frauds, but also companies like General Electric that historically has had very not fraudulent but very complicated, sort of questionable accounting practices, and so that was. Learning accounting in general is a very valuable skill for lots of things: investment banking, investing, investment management, management consulting, lots of different things. So those are some that stand out. And then on the music side, I had a minor in music history. Penn does not have a music performance program, but they have. But I did minor in music history, and I got to know one of the professors really well on a personal level. So we went to I was in several of his classes, but we also went to concerts together. I met some major performers through him, people like Joshua Bell, and I played. He taught a class that was just focused on Beethoven, so I played one of the Beethoven piano concertos in the class, and so that was really fun.
I think for me, I know the core is like what Columbia is like known for, but when you're going through it, it kind of sucks because it's like so much work. But I actually really liked my CC professor, and I think how she structured a class, it wasn't only focused on the text, but also really on how to like analyze the text and how to make that sort of translatable in like your day-to-day life and increasing that critical thinking piece that I still carry to this day. But I think probably the question is where the question is going is, your interest in career in finance, was there like a course that like stuck out to us or like was helpful in like getting our job? So unfortunately, because I'm a career pivoter, I didn't take much finance courses, but I think one thing that I can offer you is as you're taking these courses, it's like great for the knowledge that like you'll gain out of it, but a lot of times I would say shop around for different sections with like TAs who are like kind of really great at teaching. Sometimes they can be really, really incredible, like PhD students or like TAs who are super smart, but if they can't explain a concept to you, like when you don't get it, you're not really getting much out of it. So I would just say for whatever course that like you're interested in, make sure that like the TAs are really great. And I think to Kevin's point, sometimes like you have more opportunities, I think, to get close with a professor if it's a topic that you're really interested in, or if it's a smaller section. So I would definitely sort of take advantage of that because you kind of don't know also like a referral that can come out of that or different opportunities that you didn't have the foresight in like going into those classes. Yeah.
Yeah, that's great, right. And I would add that there are some professors are amazing. Others, even at top schools like Columbia and Wharton, are not amazing. And so those really in-demand classes, sometimes I just when it was time to choose classes for the semester, I would kind of not want to bother with the trying to get into a more competitive class. And in hindsight, that was probably a mistake. So, definitely seek out the professors who are really dynamic, really engaging, and try to attend their class, but also get to know them if you, to the extent that that's possible.
Thank you, guys. It is 7:01, and I want to honor everybody's time. We have one more question. It's from an anonymous attendee. So I would say if you are comfortable, if you'd be willing to email me, I'm Catherine, Kathryn at musicalmentors.org. I can share it with Kevin and Seung, and we can get you a brief little answer to that question, because I think it's a really good one about balancing risk and reward and principles that guide you. So it is a really thoughtful question. I don't want to drop the ball on it, but I also want to honor everyone's time. I am so grateful for everyone's attendance, and I am very, very grateful for Seung Lee and Kevin Lenaghan, who joined us today. Kevin is actually still in LA, and Seung is in New York, right? So we have both coasts represented, and this was a really enjoyable conversation, and I think you guys shared so many helpful and important nuggets and experiences and guiding lights, and I hope everyone enjoyed the conversation. We are going to be doing a lot more of these, so please keep an eye out for additional sessions. We will do some combos that are similar industries, a couple more finance, tech, startup things, some law focused, some music focused, but we're also going to do a few that are mixed industries to just offer ideas around different professional pathways. So again, thank you all so much, Kevin and Seung. Thank you. Thank you so much for joining us and being a part of these conversations and supporting MMC in this way.
Thank you.
Of course. Thank you for organizing.
Of course. Of course. Have a great night, everybody.
Okay, bye. Thank you.
Take care.